So first of all, let's officially welcome you to the Optimize Advisor podcast. Thank you for tuning in today. Sincerely, we appreciate the time.
Thank you.
Allow me to give you a proper introduction. As you stated just a moment ago, you are a veteran, to say the least, in this business. Your experience and your success speak loudly. 54 only 54 years in the business. You're still learning.
Yes, sir.
36 years as part of Top of the Table. So since the 90s, you've been in that esteemed group. Maybe longer, maybe the 80s.
No, 1990 was my first year, Scott.
Okay, 1990. All right. Winner of awards like the Milwaukee NAFA Distinguished Service Award, Senior Market Advisor Magazine's Advisor of the Year. You know, interestingly enough, I actually remember the cover of that magazine, which was a publication we followed for many years in a previous life of mine. You've spoken around the world to insurance and for financial professionals. You've been the main platform speaker at MDRT and NAFA events many, many times. You're known for helping advisors improve their practice by focusing on asking great questions, which we will double click on today, understanding clients' problems deeply, and selling knowledge and wisdom rather than just products. What a concept. When I say we, Bill and the Optimize Insurance Planning team, we love your newsletter. I would like to talk a few minutes about your newsletter as we get into that approach. Certainly this last one, which was great, it was all about taxes and really diving into tax expertise. One of the things that I was having a conversation on yesterday, Van, was a group of advisors, and I took a hot take of saying, look, as a consumer today, I can go to any number of technologies, mediums, investment platforms, and get all the asset allocation intelligence that I would need as a consumer. So unless you're broadening the scope of work and expertise, and when I say health and wealth and just the overall comprehensive financial planning approach to your clients, your days are going to be numbered. They don't need just product. That's not what the consumer is hungry for and asking for, because albeit maybe not today, maybe not next week, but certainly within not too long a future, from a portfolio standpoint, from even a product standpoint, I won't need an agent or an advisor. It's the other things that are going to provide value to households. Your newsletter does a really, really good job of giving in-depth expertise and insights to just that. So I don't want to derail the conversation here. Why don't we start with this, Van? I also joke and talk about how, so I'll give you the very, very 10-second version of how I came into the insurance business. I always thought that I wanted to be a stockbroker. I have a degree in finance, or at least that's what I called it, a stockbroker, not really knowing what a financial advisor was. I had a very, very short stint at a very bad time in the markets in 2000 with a firm, won't be named. Was not a pleasant experience. And a very, very good friend of mine who was in the construction industry said, my brother does what you do. Why don't you talk to him? He's in a building right next door. And he was an insurance professional. Never heard the word annuity, really never had spent any time in life insurance. And it was so enlightening to me that you could provide all of these things and do all these wonderful things to a consumer, a retiree. And I never looked back. In other words, insurance found me, and it sucked me into this vortex in the most blessed and beautiful way, and I've never looked back. And so I say, it's interesting because it's somehow insurance finds a way to reach out to people like us, and it pulls us in, and 54 years later, we're still in the business. How did you get going?
Oh, gee, that's terribly interesting. I studied to be an accountant, and I helped open the largest JCPenney store in the San Fernando Valley in California. And my great grandfather was a buyer for the JCPenney company. So
Okay.
I thought I was going to go up through the ranks of JCPenney, blah, blah, blah. And when you're 21 years old, I soon realized that the only way I was going to advance is that a lot of people were going to have to die. So it became very frustrated how I was ever going to rise to any kind of level that I wanted to. So I came home back to Milwaukee. I live in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I live about 100 yards from Northwestern Mutual. And I went to work for a subsidiary of JCPenney, but at that time it was called Treasure Island. And while I was there, I was terribly unhappy. And my brother bowled with an agent, a manager, who was with a company called Bankers Life and Casualty, the John D. MacArthur company. And he told my brother told him how unhappy I was, and he came and talked to me. And I said, sure, I'll try it. And my hair was down to here. This is 1973.
Oh my gosh.
And in those days, we didn't take the test on a computer. I actually had to drive from Milwaukee to Madison to pass the exam. And this is an interesting story. A lot of people don't know it, but I drove to Madison 3 times to take the test, and all 3 times I got a 68. I flunked all 3 times. The 3rd time I lucked out. See, this is how I know somebody's always been looking after me. The commissioner of insurance came out and said, Van, this is the 3rd time you've taken a test, the 3rd time you got a 68. He said, you must be reading something into these questions that's not there. I'm going to ask you 5 questions. If you get them right, I'm going to pass you. And I must have got him right because he passed me. So what everybody needs to understand is I've never even passed a written exam to be an insurance agent.
Oh my gosh.
And I've been able to build a career that's amazing. So anyway, the problem for me was I went to work for this company and they had leads. And so I was lazy. I ran a few leads every day. I learned how to I made actually 2 or 3 sales a day. They were little ones. $2 a month, $5 a month, stuff like that. And I did that for 16 years, and I became probably one of the most negative insurance agents in America. In fact, I jokingly tell audiences that they should all be very angry at me because I'm pretty sure I'm now the reason there's compliance. I was really a bad agent. I didn't care about anybody. I didn't care about anything. I don't even think I cared much about myself. And so for 16 years, I was a cancer in my agency. They'd bring a new agent in. I put my arm around them and say, really good company. They don't issue anything, but they're really good. And the commissions are awesome. You're never going to see them. And finally, one day I walked into the office and the manager said, look, we don't care if you ever write another thing. You're causing so much damage to our agency. You're fired. And I was a jerk. And I said, that's okay. I'll just transfer to one of the other branch offices in the city. And the other 2 branch managers walked in and said, no, you won't. You're fired. Wow. I spent the whole day crying my eyes out. I don't know why, because I hated this business. I hated it. And I was negative and ugly, and I had a chip on my shoulder. And I called up a man who was the vice president of training for the company that fired me. He lived in Chicago. I live in Milwaukee. He was a Bears fan. I was a Packers fan. And I got on the phone, and the very first thing, in sobbing, said, Jimmy, you're not going to believe this. They fired me. And he did not take a breath. He said very quickly, Van, they really should have done that 10 years ago. And then he said the magic words. He said, but I can save your career. And I said, oh, my God, what do I have to do? And he said, from now on, I want you to take care of people whether you make a commission or not. And to show you what a dirtball I was, I said, well, Jimmy, if I do that, I'll starve to death. And he didn't take a breath. He said, well, okay, then you're fired. And I said, no, you don't understand. He said, no, you don't understand. Either do exactly what I tell you or you're fired. In my 17th year, that was the first year I made the $1 Million Roundtable with his guidance. The next year I made Court of the Table, and now 36 years in a row I've made Top of the Table. Somebody grabbed me from the abyss, pulled me out by the back of my neck and said, Do you understand the industry is not about you? It's about serving other people. I had no clue for 16 years, not a single idea. And he gradually showed me that the way to show people that you're interested in them is by not talking about yourself, but by asking about them. So I started developing questions, and I started to become almost a psycho about learning from all the greats, John Savage and Ben Feldman and Roger Zener and Tom Wolfe and Sid Friedman and Norm Levine. And all of them, if you go back and study, all they did was ask questions. They never told anybody anything. They just wanted to find out about you. And what I gradually came to understand is that the thing that people like to talk about more than anything else in the world is their opinions. Mm-hmm. They want to talk about what they believe in. So it doesn't matter what I believe in. My job is to serve them, find out exactly what they believe in, and go forward. So he saved my life. He saved my career. He became like my adopted father almost. And he's passed away now for almost 20 years, but he's such an integral part of the going forward of my life. So to make a long story short, what ended up happening is I started to understand that even asking questions wasn't the right answer. See, I have on my website, if you ever go to it, it's Van's 40 questions plus bonuses. And I have agents who read the 40 questions for free, and then they call me up on the phone. I'm not kidding. And they say, well, what's the answer? What's the answer to those questions? They completely missed the point of it. And I realized I don't blame them. It was my fault because I didn't do a good enough job of getting them to understand. You use questions to engage people in conversations that they make a determination on their own because of that conversation that maybe they need to look into something that they're not looking into. They maybe have a peripheral understanding of inflation. They may look out of this side of their head and go, oh my God, what if I run out of money in retirement? Or, oh gosh, what about taxes? But please, if you really pay attention, the attention span of an American is about 8 seconds. And even then, that's considered long. And so they don't want a big, long conversation from me. They want to do all the talking. And so all the questions do is help organize for the prospect, client, customer, what they need to have a conversation about so that they can create, this is very important, and I want to say it exactly correctly. The only thing certain about the future is uncertainty. Mm-hmm. And if you as an insurance and financial professional can bring more certainty to their lives, they will include you into their families. They will adore you. They will buy anything from you because they want to have some certainty so that they can spend the rest of the short amount of time that they have to actually live and enjoy their lives. They don't want to be worried about this stuff all the time. And so what it finally took me the time to learn, and I'm still learning about it, and I still have lots of great mentors that I go and talk to, lots of coaches that I work with. Jim Ruda is one of my great coaches. I mean, we talk back and forth about things all the time. Can we make a 6-word question into a 5-word question? Can we make it more powerful? Can we adjust a word? I used to say to people all the time, yeah, when did you make a decision that you were going to make the Internal Revenue Service the primary beneficiary of your IRA or 401k? And an agent came up to me one time and said, you know, Van, nobody knows what the hell primary means. And I thought about it for a couple of days. I went, oh my God, he's exactly right. I'm being an insurance guy instead of somebody who's helped. And so all I did was change one word and it dramatically changed my outcome. When did you make a determination that you and your family were going to make the Internal Revenue Service the biggest beneficiary of your IRA or your 401k? And the almost immediate reaction is, what are you talking about? And I say to agents, do you understand they just gave you permission to have a conversation with them. And all you have to do is ask them, why did you determine that you were going to make the Internal Revenue Service the biggest beneficiary? And can I ask you something? Do you think these taxes will even be way higher in the future? And then you stop and you look at them and you say, now this is really important. Bet you nobody has ever asked you this question before. It's such an amazing question. I bet you have other insurance agents, other advisors, other financial people. You have an accountant, you have an attorney. Not one of them has ever asked you this question. And I go, are you ready? And they're like, do you want to
waiting on bated breath? They're waiting on bated breath.
Do you want to pay those taxes? And every single time they go, no. And I go, so man, what are you going to do? What's your strategy to not pay those taxes? And that'll go for sometimes 30 seconds, a minute. I've had it happen one time where it went 5 minutes back and forth. And finally they look at you and they say, well, gosh, I don't know. What do you think I should do? Or if you in my shoes, how would you handle something like that? Or gosh, is there something I can do about it? And I stop and I say to the agent, do you understand? Because you did that, it only took you 30 seconds. And now you're no longer a salesperson. You're their advocate. You're their advisor. You're their counselor because they asked you to. Now you can have any kind of a conversation that you want with them. And that's what I do all day. I just drive around and have these great conversations. And when we're done, people give me lots of money. It's funny.
It's interesting because everything you just spoke around about is wordsmithing, wisdom in the industry on how you articulate these things. It's about knowledge. Never once did the word a product get mentioned. The other interesting takeaway is when you talk about clients and what really concerns them, what their quote unquote real problems are, it's not really about wealth. It's income, it's taxes, it's legacy. I use the word expenses, like the unpredictable expenses, i.e. extended health care, long-term care, things like that. Those are the root of their concerns or what's keeping them up at night. It's not extra zeros. So how do you advisors, it's like, what's the cost of avoiding these tough questions to get to root of what it is that really matters?
Well, see, that's the key to what you were talking about before and what Bill was trying to articulate. I do not and have not for 35 years ever paid for a lead. I still cold call. I still walk up to people in a grocery store and ask them questions.
Really?
Absolutely.
Wow.
And I'm really very shy and very self-conscious. But the minute that I stop worrying about me and I start worrying about them, I'm able to get over my self-consciousness. And that's also one of the keys of building self-esteem is when you make a decision to serve somebody else, it's the fastest way to build your self-esteem. I didn't know that for 16 years. So please, if I can, Scott, may I have just a minute? There's really 5 things we should have a conversation with everybody, anywhere, anytime, and it'll lead to all kinds of wonderful outcomes.
Oh, for heavens, yes, please.
Do you think there'll be higher taxes in the future? Just yes or no. It's not a big, it's their opinion. And everybody says, well, what if they say no? And that's why you say there's 4 other questions, because everybody has their own thing. But you always start with taxes because of the 5 things, only 2 of them are really emotional. And you're going to laugh what I'm about to say to you. The 2 emotional ones are the easiest ones to fix. The 3 that are not emotional are serious and hard to fix. And they're becoming in fact, the second one's actually becoming very dangerous. So let me just quick name them so I don't get balled up in this. First one is there going to be higher taxes in the future? Second, is there going to be lower benefits, higher deductibles, higher premiums, more out-of-pocket expense? Doesn't that mean a lower standard of living for you and your family? Are you okay with that? Third, let me ask you something. Do you think we're going to have inflation? And can I ask you something? What if there was a way, instead of being harmed by inflation, you could actually take advantage of inflation? Can I give you an example of being harmed by inflation? Let's say you retire at age 65 on $50,000 a year, and we have just 7% inflation. And I say to them, do you know why I use that number? Not because I know what it is, because there's an argument whether it's 2.5 or whether it's 11 right now, and I can show you on both sides of the ball. So I'm just using 7 because there's an accounting rule called the rule of 72, which says if I divide the inflation rate into 72, it will tell me approximately how many years before I need twice as much money to live on. So if I started at 65 on 50,000 a year, that means at 75, I'll need 100,000 a year. And at 85, I'll need 200,000 a year. Or said the reverse way, if I start out at 50,000 a year at age 65, my purchasing power at age 75 will be only 25,000, and my purchasing power at age 85 will only be 12,500. So here's the deal. This is really important. You're not working anymore. How are you going to take advantage of inflation so that you can keep up with what's going on with inflation? What's your strategy for that? I don't tell them what to do. I ask them, do you have a strategy for that? And are you worried about it? And with beef prices costing more, and energy costing more, and health insurance costing more, and car insurance costing more, and property taxes going up, how are you going to deal with that going forward? And fourth is volatility. And this week alone, we're having this conversation, Scott, right now. We've had volatility over the last 5 days where we've had 3 big ups and 3 big downs, and it's bouncing all over the place. Bitcoin went from 126,000 to 67,000. Can you imagine? Silver lost 30% in a day. Gold is down from 5,600 high to about 5,000 currently. There's tons of volatility coming. And listen what I ask my customers. I say, can I ask you something? Have we still had the big crash yet? What do you think is going to happen to all this when the crash comes? I don't tell them. I ask them. They tell me what they think. Because there is some kind of an enormous, you have to pay the piper thing that's going to happen because of all of the ridiculousness that's going on with our country. And then finally, longevity. I ask them, I say, let me ask you something. If you retire at 65 and you die at 70, are we going to have any trouble planning your retirement? Of course not. But if you retire at 65 and you live till you're 95, and you run out of money when you're 72 years old, can I ask you something? What do you think the rest of your retirement is going to look like? And so those are the 5 things: higher taxes, lower benefits, inflation, volatility, and longevity. And you don't want to sit next to me on an airplane. You don't want to sit next to me at a baseball game, football game, basketball game. You're going to pay for my tickets because I'm going to drip on you the whole day. I'm going to be asking you about those things. So what do you think is going to happen with this? And how do you feel about that? And what do you think they're going to do about this? And can I ask you something? With everything that's going on right now, all of us old codgers, that's what I say. All of us old people, we're going to be okay because they're going to take care of us because we got the votes. But you know who's going to get creamed? Isn't it going to be, and watch how I do it, isn't it going to be our children and our grandchildren? I didn't tell them. They can argue with me if they don't agree, but 99% of the time they do. And so there's another question. Ready? Grandma and Grandpa, come on. What if we could show you a way that even if you completely ran out of money, instead of giving that money to a government, a nursing home, or a hospital, instead of completely running out of money, you could keep that money in your family for generations to come. Come on, at the very least, even if you didn't do anything, wouldn't you at least want to know how to do that?
Mm-hmm.
And so you want to hear something, Scott? And I'm not lying to you. I bet you I've asked that question 25,000 times, and I've never had a customer say no. And we share it with agents. And I had one agent that a couple of years ago, he said, Van, I've been trying to get an appointment with this couple for 4 years. I said, well, next time you meet with them, ask them this exact question. Grandma and Grandpa, if we could show you a way to stay in complete control of your money till you took your last breath, but instead of giving that money to a government, nursing home, or hospital, you could keep that money in your family for generations to come. Come on, at the very least, even if you didn't do anything, wouldn't you at least want to know how to do that? He said, the guy said, well, sure, I'd give you an appointment for that right away. He said he started to laugh. He couldn't believe it. He said, one question and something that he'd been working on for 4 years. And they said, don't you understand? You kept telling, and they really wanted to share with their opinions. And that's all. If you can learn how to do that, you can do that. Here's the fun part, Scott. It doesn't have to take 6 months or a year or 2 years. What if you could learn this in 7 to 30 days? And all you had to do is find 8 or 10 great questions that you could ask anybody, anywhere, anytime. I guarantee that you would double your amount of interviews, appointments, whatever you want to call them, and you'd increase your sales dramatically, because now it would be all about them and not about you. And so that's the conversations that I have literally every day, all day long. Yeah, I'll stop people in the grocery store and say, man, isn't this weird what's going on? I do all the grocery shopping. I said to this lady, I said, can I ask you a dumb question? I said, I'm an insurance and financial advisor. I said, please, I'm not trying to sell you anything. In fact, if you feel this is an imposition in any way, I'll be happy to buy you some melons or a grape or something like that. She said, I said, please, this will take you a minute, and I think you'll even be interested in your answer. I said, can I ask you something? This is really important. I can help a lot of people if I know I'm asking the right thing. And she said, okay, I can give you a minute. And I said, here's the questions. Do you think it's more beneficial to take a tax deduction now on a small amount of money and then transfer a whole bunch of money to the future that the government can tax at any level they want going forward? And aren't they going to need a lot more money? Or do you think it would be more beneficial to pay your taxes now when they're historically as low as they'll ever be for the rest of your life, and transfer to the future a whole bunch of money that government could never get their hands on ever again? Which one do you think would be the most beneficial for you and your family? The first one or the second one? And she went like this in a grocery store. She went, come on, are you kidding? That's easy. It's the second one. And I said, well, can I ask you a dumb question? This is what I'm trying to get to. She said, well, what? I said, why are you and your husband doing the first one? And she went, I swear to you, oh my God, I didn't realize that's what we were doing. And I said, if you're putting money in an IRA, 401k, 403b, aren't you sending money to the future that the government can tax any way they want? She said, oh my God, I didn't realize that. That's very interesting. This was an intelligent, attractive woman in a dress grocery shopping. I said, thank you. I'd still be happy to buy you some grapes or a melon. She said, no, I want your card. And I said, ma'am, I swear to you, I really wasn't trying to sell you anything. I just wanted your opinion. She said, no, you can't leave without giving me your card. I gave her my card, and I got an appointment with her later that week, and her and her husband gave me, I think, around $600,000 for walking through a grocery store and asking a question.
Wow.
This happens to me all the time, because now I'm not asking about a product, an interest rate, a cash value, a premium. I'm asking for their opinion about things that are going on every day in their lives.
Are these, you said that there were 40 of these questions. I presume a couple of these you just cited are some of those that are part of that 40.
Oh, no, the 40 are the best. To be honest with you, I have 1,817 questions.
You're kidding me.
No. I got a.
Oh my gosh, that's a novel itself.
I work on them all the time, and some of them I'm starting to pull back out that I used to use before that I'm not using as often. Again, it's just to engage people in a conversation. Then they make the determination. Yes, boy, I'd like some more information about that. And I just have a real simple way, Scott. I just say, look, there's no cost or obligation. I swear to you on my kids and my grandkids, I won't try to sell you anything. And when I'm finished, I believe you'll be so pleased with the information that you'll actually walk me to my car, hold my car door open for me. Fair enough? So can you find me 45 minutes in the next week or two? And everybody we teach that to, they go, oh my God. But new agents and experienced agents who are struggling say, how can you tell them you're not going to sell them anything? And I say, because I don't want to sell them anything. Americans love to buy. Americans hate to be sold. Mm-hmm. So I want to position myself to help them buy. And you can't do that by telling them things. They make the determination that they want to buy something because it's interesting. So the one final thing, and then I'm going to let you talk for a while. Really no, this is important. When I talk to agents, I say, please, even if you're a brand new agent, do you understand that every person you will ever talk to believes that you're the best insurance agent that's ever lived, and that the only reason you're coming to see them is because you want to sell them something? And please, that's the truth. That's why everybody struggles to get an appointment, because that's their first line of defense. They know that the only reason you want to meet with them is to sell them something. So then the next question is, what could you possibly ask them that was so interesting, so engaging, so amazing, so important that they got the answer to it, that they would still give you an appointment even though they knew the only reason you were coming to see them was to sell them something? And that's what those questions are. You know, do you want to be rich, or do you want an absolute positive guarantee that you'll never be poor? And 95% of the time they say, well, I want the guarantee. I say, well, what if we could show you a way that even during these ridiculously uncertain times, that even if you completely ran out of money, you would never run out of income? Gosh, at the very least, wouldn't you at least want to know that that was possible? Wouldn't you want to know how to take advantage of opportunities rather than be hurt by these things all the time? And what if there was actual strategy that would allow you to not lose any money, yet every time something bad happened, you could access that money and take advantage of the opportunity? And I saved the best part for last. Are you ready? And they go, yeah. I say, what if you could do all of that with partial or even total return of all the income tax liability on that money? Can I ask you something? If you knew you could do that right now, when would you want to get started with something like that? And what I just explained, if you'll just, I hope you'll laugh, is a cash value life insurance policy. That's what it is.
Yeah.
It builds up money. I didn't tell them it would make anything. I've never sold a policy where I told them it would make money in the policy. I say, if you give me a 10 pay, let's say it's $10,000 a year. I say, if you give me $10,000 a year for 10 years, at the end of 10 years, you're going to have almost $100,000 in cash value. And they stop and they say, well, Van, that sounds like it didn't make any money. I say, boy, I know it looks that way, but can I ask you another question? Always gets you out of trouble. Didn't we just turn almost $100,000 of forever tax money into almost $100,000 of never ever again tax money? I have a question for you. What do you think the value of that's going to be for the rest of your life? And second, didn't we make that 100,000 look like 150 or 200 or 250,000? And doesn't that mean that during your lifetime, we can use most of that cash value that's in that situation? And when you die, the death benefit will replenish all the money you used during your lifetime, income tax free. It is the only money ever designed on planet Earth where you are allowed to use the same exact money twice, once while you're alive, and then it's replenished to be used as a legacy after you die. Did you know that?
That's fantastic.
And it only takes, if you get what I'm saying, Scott, everything I'm talking to you about, does it take long? No, it's a couple of minutes. Quick, now they're talking. I'm doing this fast because we're trying to fit this into a time frame. But I want you to understand, once I ask the question, I just shut up and, I'm just, yeah, wow. Ooh, ah. Some people, the whole conversation goes like this. I go, and what? Yeah, really? Honest? You know what they say when I'm done? Boy, you're one of the best conversations I've ever had. And I haven't said anything.
Right. You're asking questions. You're just asking questions. And it is very interesting that what the exercise is, the commitment is putting in the work as a professional to learn what to say and what questions to ask, right? And how to ask those. And that's the commitment. That's the work that needs to be put in. And to coordinate with that, then becomes knowledge, right? The application part of what it is that we do to help those clients and change their lives. Let me ask you this question. Regardless of where you are in the curve of your career, what are some of the daily habits or weekly routines that are just something that you committed to doing over your years that have changed the game or made the difference in your practice?
I still do them. I'm going to give you the outline first, and then I'm going to tell you a little bit about each one. There's only three things that you have to do to be successful in our business. First of all is you have to have enough appointments. I run 30 to 50 appointments a week. So I'm not sitting in the office shuffling papers. I'm in front of people. And do I sell them all? Does everybody like me? No. But that's okay. I move on to the next one because I have plenty of appointments. There's lots of agents out there. I had one a couple of years ago. He came up to me and he said, Van, I only have 3 appointments a week. And then sometimes people call and 2 of them get canceled. And now I only have 1 appointment a week. I said, can I ask you something? We could show you how to get 10 appointments a week, 2 a day. Would that change your career? And he started to cry. He said, oh my God, it would mean everything. You have to understand, with all the great stuff that people like Bill and you and David McKnight and Ed Slott and all of these people, Tom Hegna, oh my God, and Joe Jordan and all these people are sharing. How come less than 4% of the agents in the United States still write enough business to qualify for the $1 Million Roundtable? Mm-hmm. And I've argued with MDRT that half of those agents are starving to death because by the time they pay their marketing and their expenses, they're living on $50,000 or $60,000 a year, and that's no money. So why, if all of this the stuff that we're sharing with everybody, how come it's not working? And the answer is a couple of things. First of all, not enough appointments. That's the key. Even top of the table. I'm sitting at the top of the table meeting last year with 20 top of the table agents. And I asked them if they had enough appointments. And they say, no, I don't have enough appointments. At the Forum 400, no, I don't have enough appointments. The key is getting in front of people and being able to ask them questions. Second, what do you do when you get in front of those customers? You have to engage in conversations that will inspire them to take action. That's what we do for a living. We don't sell insurance. If you think you sell insurance, you're already out of the business. If you think you sell investments, you're out of the business. That's going to be done by artificial intelligence. We inspire people to take action. That's the most powerful attribute any person can have, period, end of quote. And so what we do is we talk about things that matter: higher taxes, lower benefits, inflation, volatility, and longevity. And please, I tell agents, you can change the words to whatever you want. These are words that I feel comfortable with. You can, if you don't like longevity, you can change it to long-term care. You can, whatever you want to do, just make sure that you can do it conversationally. And third, and most important, this is the key. 3 words: find the money. See, so many people think they don't have any money when really Americans have a lot of ineffective and inefficient money called IRAs, 401ks, 403bs, 457 plans, which the government is laying in wait to slaughter their children and their grandchildren. So, Grandma and Grandpa, what if while you were alive, without giving up control of that money, you could eliminate or dramatically reduce all the income tax liability on that money? And I have a selfish reason for you to do that. And they go, what? Yeah, forget about everybody else. Let's take care of you first. If we get rid of the taxes while you're alive, won't that make the money last longer without you taking any additional risk? They go, oh my God, I never thought of that. Well, shouldn't we do that? And second, because we did that, won't it mean that there'll be a greater opportunity that we can pass this along to your children and your grandchildren rather than giving it to the government, a nursing home, or a hospital? They go, yeah. So how can I always close up. I say, can I ask you a dumb question? How come you're not doing that already? I thought for sure somebody like you would be doing that already. So here's what I'm trying to say. When you ask me what I do every day, what I try to do is I read voraciously. Now, I'm not telling agents they should do that. What I'm saying is, if you have somebody like me who likes to do that, then what if you could spend $20 a month and invest and access all the stuff that that person is reading so that you could stay current all the time and you could practice learning to ask the questions in a way that would inspire people to have more appointments with you, be inspired to take action, and would be willing to find the money with you so that they would be able to be more successful in their lives. And so that's why the newsletter is there, because in an hour, Scott, I can't help somebody learn the things that they need to learn so they'll be successful. And I hope you heard me clearly. I didn't say I'm going to teach them anything, because if they don't want to be taught anything, I can't teach them anything.
Mm-hmm.
If they're willing to learn, I can point them in the right direction. And if they're willing to do the work, I will continue to help them learn to the best extent of my ability. But I need them to have the willingness to have a foundation. And so that's what the newsletter's about every month. Like last month, it was about finally the 1040 came out. And so I said, read the whole thing so you have a foundation. But here's the pages. There's only like 6 pages that you really have to pay attention to. And there's 2 reasons why, even if you're only using 6 pages, that you have to print out the whole thing. And the first reason is you don't want your customers to think that you're editing anything. You want them to see that you're taking it right from the pages of the information that the Internal Revenue Service is sharing. And second, you want them to understand that out of 130 some pages, if you know 6 of them very well, it will dramatically change your career, because now you can determine whether their Social Security will be taxable or not, and why they should actually give consideration to having all their Social Security taxable. Second, what's the new standard deduction? Do you know now? Listen to this, Scott. This is amazing information. Almost 50% of Americans don't pay any taxes, but all 50% of those people are contributing to deductible IRAs and 401ks, even though they don't pay any taxes.
Yeah.
Oh my God, why isn't somebody talking to them? Why isn't somebody saying, hey, do you understand exactly what you're doing? You're putting money in a vehicle that'll build piles of money for the government in the future, and you're not receiving any benefit for doing it. And even if you do pay taxes, under current law, listen to this, you can make up to $147,600 as a married couple over the age of 65 in 2026 and still be in the 12% marginal tax bracket,
Right.
with the effective tax rate being only 7.8%. So let me ask you something. If you're still working, at 65 and you're making, and you want to put 20,000 into a 401k, if you're only getting, I'm going to round figure and say 8%, you're only saving out of $20,000, $1,600 in taxes, so that you can build up a gigantic pile of money for the government to tax like crazy down the road. Does that seem reasonable to you? Does that seem beneficial to you? I don't tell them, I ask them. And when they get done, they go, man, I never even thought of that. That's what I almost start crying. I'm so happy, because when they say, I never even thought about that, I say, well, what if there was a way to pay those taxes now when they're so ridiculously inexpensive, and you can transfer a whole bunch of money to the future where you'd never have to worry about it ever again. So when you ask me what I do every day, I take and read voraciously. Then I take all the information that I'm reading and I think, how can I ask a customer, a prospect, a client about these issues that are happening every day in the most simple way humanly possible? I don't want to show them how smart I am. I'm trying to prove to the prospect or client or customer how smart they are. And so healthcare is in the news like crazy right now. You know what I'm asking my customers now? I say, you know what? I've been selling health insurance for 54 years. And I used to tell everybody I knew everything there was to know about health insurance. And until I got sick, I didn't realize that I didn't know anything about health insurance. I didn't understand how terrifying it was to not have enough insurance, or not have the right insurance, or not be able to go where you wanted to go, or not get the care that you need. Let me ask you something. Are you sure that you're in control of what would happen? And then we start a conversation. It only took a minute to ask the right question to get them to talk about something that matters. So that's the first thing. Second, what can I ask them to inspire them to take action? Why are you doing it this way? And one final, thank you for giving me enough time, Scott. I never tell anybody they're wrong, even when they're 100% wrong. I say to them, boy, that's a really beneficial way of doing stuff. But can I ask you something? What if you could do something that was 2 or 3 or 4 times more beneficial than what you're doing now? Come on, at the very least, wouldn't you want to know what that was?
Mm-hmm.
So instead of starting out from a negative place, I'm just saying, hey, what you're doing, you're already taking some action. What if we could do something that was even more beneficial? Wouldn't that be amazing?
Right.
And the last thing is find the money. So I understand and study and practice. You'll notice how I was able to tell you what the income for a married couple over age 65 is going to be for 2026. It's $146,700 because they get a $12,000 deduction, extra deduction. They get it for 2026, 2027, and 2028 under the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. And so when I talk to them, I say, boy, the government actually gave you an opportunity that you're allowed to take advantage of legally to reduce or eliminate your income tax liability on fully taxable money. Can I ask you something? Do you want to just take a little advantage of it, or do you want to take a lot of advantage of it? And so I have appointment after appointment of people right now that say, boy, I want to know how to do that. I want to take advantage. Mm-hmm. And that's the 3 things. Get enough appointments. How do you inspire people to take action? And how do you find the money?
Find the money. That's great insight. If I can, I would like to, as we wrap up here, again, sincerely, thank you for all the insights and the time. The newsletter, I studied this. Of course, Bill is a devoted reader to the newsletter. And I just want to double click on this last month where you did just a great job of, as you said, here's the information, here's some tools that I can give you that'll equip you. If you're interested in picking up these tools, learning how to use them, they will deploy opportunities and change lives of your clients. But these are just the tools. Here's the information. You got to take the action on yourself. And then what you did was, which was really interesting in the newsletter, is you linked in tentacles. What I mean by that is there's all of these links to different, I presume, either articles and or maybe newsletters that you've had in the past for very, very timely questions and statements to address, not just to the advisor, but to ultimately their clients. So it's a tremendous resource. And so thank you for putting that together. How does a listener get in contact with you and get engaged with the newsletter if they're subscribed to the newsletter if they're so inclined?
Do we have time for me to say one more thing before I tell you?
Yeah.
That?
Oh, please. Yeah, please.
Some of my heroes, I'm not naming any names, have become more marketers than they are trainers.
Right.
I do not come on programs like this to sell the newsletter. I do not give speeches to sell the newsletter. It's available and I work on it. It's beneficial to me because I work on it. If you go to my website, it's just my name, Van Mueller. It looks like Mueller, but it's pronounced Miller because it's Dutch. So vanmueller.com, VANMUELLER.com. And at vanmueller.com, there's a free benefit. The free benefit says click on 40 questions plus bonuses. When you click on that, it's going to ask you for your email address. And that's just so we can send you stuff from time to time if we know that I'm going to be speaking somewhere or something. And when you get that and print it out, there'll be a plus sign. If you click on that plus sign, there's all kinds of scripts that are beneficial for Medicare supplement agents, multi-line agents, where they can actually work their book of business to get back in front of them almost 100% successfully to say, hey, can we talk to you about life insurance, annuities, mutual funds, long-term care, critical illness insurance, etc. Now, you're not going to ask them those things, But what it does is it shows you scripts. That's free. But then if you go a little further into the newsletter, it also shows that you can sign up for the newsletter. It's $19.95 a month. I wanted to keep it ridiculously inexpensive. And every month I put out in the first few days of the month a newsletter with 7 sales ideas. I used to have 10, but agents told me it was too long. They couldn't read all of it. So I reduced it down to 7. And what we now do to support it is we record a recording every month that is attached with the newsletter subscription. So you can not only read the newsletter, but then you can hear me explain how to effectively use the newsletter, and you can keep those things forever. They're permanent. You can watch them over and over, because the secret of all learning is really repetition. The more you practice, I talk to agents all the time. I was in Tampa, and there was a guy that played professional basketball. And I said to him, let me ask you something. If you read the 50 greatest books ever written about how to be a basketball player, would you be any good at basketball? And he said, well, of course not. And I said, well, isn't that what we tell you to do in insurance? We tell you to come in and study life insurance and annuities and mutual funds. I know millions of CLU CHFCs that don't make $30,000 a year selling insurance and financial products. And I'm not cutting them down. I respect and admire that they have the knowledge. What they don't know how to do is how to inspire somebody to want to have an appointment with them. And so what I said to the basketball player is I said, let me ask you something. In order to get good enough to be a pro, how many times did you have to shoot a 3? And he said, well, I don't even know if I could count that high. And I said, well, exactly. I said, do you know how many times you have to practice to be a quality insurance and financial professional? And so when you learn to ask the questions, so they're conversational, so they're instinctive, so that you don't even have to think about them. And what if I told you could do that in 7 to 30 days and you could dramatically change your career? Mm-hmm. Would you do it? And he said, well, of course I would do it. And I said, well, you haven't done it to this point. When are you going to get started? I did it in front of the whole audience. And he said, well, right now. And I said, well, good, because that's the only way you're ever going to get good at this. You're good looking, you're tall, you're charming, you're all of those things. You're smarter than I am in your little finger. And yet you couldn't follow me around for a day. You'd be exhausted running all the appointments I run. I say, when do you want to show everybody how good you can be at this? And he said, well, right now. And I said, how did you get good at basketball? And I repeated it again. He said, well, I practice. And I said, well, how do you want to get good at this? He said, well, I'm going to practice. And that's really the key. Repetition. The way we train our children, the way we train our doggies and our pets, the way we train, everything is learned by repetition. And so please, if you go to vanmiller.com, you can sign up for the newsletter. And please, I want this to be a benefit, but I'm going to give you my cell phone number. It's 414-881-6246. 414-881-6246. And if you sign up for the newsletter, everybody knows that's a member of the newsletter. They can call me anytime, and I'll be happy to review any questions you have. I'll be willing to practice with you, because it doesn't benefit just you. It benefits both of us, and that's why it works. And second, even if you don't sign up for the newsletter, I owe. And so if you're willing to do the work, I'm willing to give you enough information so that you can practice and practice and practice. And that's why there's free information that's available, because I'm very lucky. In my 16th year, somebody took care of me when I didn't deserve to be taken care of. And my career changed dramatically because somebody loved me when I didn't deserve to be loved. And so that's the same for all of you, but you have to be willing. This is the key. You have to be willing to do the work. Selling insurance and financial products is simple, but it's not easy.
I say that all the time. That's a great closing statement. I say it all the time. What we do is simple. Doesn't mean that it's easy. The two are completely independent of each other. Amen to you. Van, you are a incredible wealth of knowledge. You are a testament to our industry. Thank you so much to your generosity as well, and your willingness to provide value to those that are behind you, and leaving that lasting legacy. It's an incredible inspiration. So thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you to everybody. And please, Scott, if your listeners really like this, I'd be happy to do it again with you. This was fun. Thank you. I have a lot more stuff to share.
So in closing, this is just for now. This is we cheers to all of those who tuned in, and we look forward to having this conversation again.
The Optimized Advisor podcast is intended for financial professionals only. The content discussed is for informational and educational purposes and should not be construed as financial, investment, legal, or tax advice. Listeners should consult their own professional advisors before implementing any strategies discussed. Views expressed are those of the hosts and guests and do not necessarily reflect the views of Optimized Insurance Planning or its affiliates.